Welcome, everybody. Welcome to your Public Works Gang Reduction Committee. I'm joined by my colleagues, Council Members Martinez, Rue, and Rodriguez. Mr. Buscaino will not be able to join us today. Unless there is an objection from my colleagues, well, do we have any public comment cards on items 5, 7, or 8? Seeing none on those, unless there's an objection, I'm going to ask that we take items 5, 7, and 8 on consent. 5, 7, and 8. Seeing no objection, okay. General public comment. Do we have any general public comment cards? No, we do not. General public comment is closed. So we will now move to item, do we have any multiple comment cards? No. Okay, great. Then we will move to item number 1.
Item number 1 is our reports from the Chief Legislative Analyst and the Bureau of Street Services relative to the Coordinated Street Furniture Program. This is also referred to the Budget and Finance Committee.
Great, thank you. So we have several speakers to come speak on this, and we will start with, I believe we'll start with the CLA on that. First we have, we'll have the CLA speak. We've got Street Services, we've got JC Deco and Metro. So we'll start with the CLA.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Quintanilla, Office of the Chief Legislative Analyst. After consideration of the Year 6 review of the city's Coordinated Street Furniture Program, Council instructed the Bureau of Street Services, with the assistance of the CLA and the City Attorney, to negotiate an extension to the city's current agreement. Negotiations concluded on June 28th, with the contractor putting forth its best and final offer. The Bureau of Street Services did not concur with the proposed terms in that offer, and on August 31st, transmitted a report recommending that Council instruct the Bureau, with the assistance of the City Attorney and the CLA, to report in 120 days with a draft RFP for a successor program. Subsequently, on September 27th, the CLA transmitted a report detailing 2 options for Council's consideration. Option 1 is to adopt the recommendation in the Bureau's August 31st report. In making this recommendation, the Bureau did not provide parameters for the proposed RFP. The CLA report addresses 4 issues for Council's consideration relative to the development of an RFP for a successor program. The first issue for consideration is the upcoming expiration of the current agreement. The current agreement has 3 years left. It will expire in December 2021. Although the current contract does expire in 2021, it must be noted that should Council choose to proceed with an RFP, the current contract contains onerous contractual ownership provisions which must be addressed. First and foremost, at the conclusion of the contract, all automated public toilets will be removed because they are proprietary under the contract. For all non-APT furniture, the city then has 3 options. The city may instruct the contractor to remove all furniture, and the city would then proceed with an entirely new program, which would require fabrication and installation of new furniture. The city may keep all non-APT furniture and operate its own non-advertising based program that would require the city to provide all costs for maintaining the furniture, operating the program, and furnishing any replacement parts that would be necessary. Third, the city may keep all non-APT furniture and operate a new advertising based successor program with a new contractor. However, in this scenario, the new contractor or the city would have to pay the current contractor the fair market value of all non-APT street furniture. The second issue for consideration is whether a successor program should include automated public toilets. As I noted, the 15 APTs currently installed will be removed at the end of the contract. The CLA report notes that 6 of the 15 APTs are currently being used in the city's mobile pit stop program. So beyond 2021, the city could pursue a successor program which includes APTs or issue an RFP for a separate APT program. The third issue is whether a successor program should include the other types of street furniture which are currently included in our agreement. The contract requires our contractor to design, manufacture, and install public amenities kiosks, pillars, newsstand vending kiosks, in addition to transit shelters and automated public toilets. Council may wish, in pursuing a successor program, to narrow the focus of that program. The final issue is that of advertising exclusivity. The current contractor has the exclusive right to display outdoor advertising in the public right-of-way in a format between 15 and 55 square feet. The city has retained all advertising rights we did not expressly grant to the contractor. However, the city also agreed that it will not permit any party other than the contractor to sell or display commercial advertising in the right-of-way. During negotiations, staff explored 3 advertising carve-outs with the contractor. The first was for the Metro Bike Share program. Staff reviewed the new bike share business plan with the contractor, and the contractor agreed to the following. The contractor agreed to provide a carve-out for Metro to retain a system-wide title sponsor. The contractor also agreed to provide a carve-out for Metro to pursue non-title sponsorship, which would include a sponsor advertising on components of the bicycle, such as handlebars, the skirt guard, or the basket of the bike. And with regard to advertising on the Metro Bike Share station ad panels, the contractor expressed a willingness to sell advertising on the station ad panels and administer advertising. The contractor would separately track and manage any revenue generated from that advertising and remit that money to the city or Metro to cover operational costs, to offset operational costs. The second carve-out discussed with the contractor was that for advertising-based digital interactive kiosks. This issue was presented in a motion introduced by Councilmember Buscaino. The contractor did not agree to provide a carve-out for advertising-based digital interactive kiosks. The primary concern here was the impact to the current program and the revenue-generating potential of the current street furniture program. The third advertising-based carve-out addressed with the contractor was that for global special events, specifically the upcoming Olympics and the World Cup. The contractor agreed to reserve media panels at areas surrounding venues or areas selected by the appropriate event organizing committee, and additional details would be negotiated at the appropriate time. Option 2 in the CLA report is to adopt the terms set forth in attachment 1 to that report and instruct the Bureau of Street Services, with the assistance of the CLA and the city attorney, to draft a first amended agreement with the contractor. Council adopted instructions containing 10 negotiation points for staff to address with the contractor. The contractor put forth an offer which broadly includes the following. The city would extend the contract for an additional 10 years through 2031, and in extending the contract, this would allow the city to benefit from the installation of additional furniture, increased amenities and services, as well as additional revenue. The city would receive a minimum of $130.5 million over a 13-year period, and the current contract includes a percentage fee. The city receives 20% of the gross revenue receipts. Under the proposed amendment, that would increase to 25%. Assuming the program grows at about 3% over the next 13 years, the city would receive about $144 million. The amendment also includes a second revenue sharing tier, which would entitle the city to 50% of revenue above certain thresholds. The city would also receive more furniture. Over the next 2 to 3 years, furniture would be installed in accordance with the rollout schedule detailed in attachment 2. The city would receive 630 new transit shelters, bringing the citywide total up to roughly 2,500 transit shelters. The city would receive 900 replacement shelters, 160 of which could be used to provide new shelters at locations which currently do not have shelters. The city would also receive 100 public amenities kiosks, bringing the citywide total to 297, and the city would receive 15 additional automated public toilets, with the option for toilets above the additional 15, provided the city paid for the fabrication and installation of those toilets. The additional furniture and revenue would be realized through a streamlined site approval process. The site approval process has continually been identified as a challenge for the current program, so the contractor and the city worked out some ways to simplify that process. The city would also realize updated services and amenities specifically a 40% increase in power washing of transit shelters across the city, increased trash pickup of up to 4 times per week in some locations. The city would also receive new litter and recycling bins at newly installed transit shelters. The contractor would provide a minimum of 300 smart shelters, LED lighting at all new shelters, and where feasible, double shelters would be installed to accommodate ridership and provide shade. The contractor would also install 200 digital media panels at certain locations to display digital advertising. Lastly, the offer addresses the contractual ownership provisions, which I discussed earlier, making it clear that the city owns all furniture with the exception of automated public toilets outright, and provides that should the possessory interest tax continue to be assessed against the program, the contractor would cover that tax. Of the negotiation points adopted by council in January of this year, the offer did not include solar-powered trash compactor type waste bins at transit shelter locations, as well as full-time attendants to monitor certain public restrooms.
Colleagues, we have 4 different presentations on this, and my thought is that rather than ask questions in between each one, because a lot of the answers they're going to provide may come from the future speakers, is that we hold all of our questions until unless it's a clarification question about what someone is saying at that second, we hold all of our questions until all of the presentations have been made, and then we'll try to do a round robin on questions, because I know we all have a lot of questions on this. So thank you from CLA's office. Next, we're going to hear from the actual contractor, J.C. Decaux, Francois Nihan. Come on up and tell us from your perspective why you think the extension is the better option.
Okay. Thank you very much. My name is François Nihan with Outfront J.C. Decaux. I am the managing director for the city P3 program for bus shelters here in Los Angeles since its inception. The bus shelter program was designed to provide amenities to your transit riders, both for pedestrians, transit riders, citywide, regardless of the neighborhood. And that program has been working for the last 17 years and will continue to work, helping many people on their journey. Today, we have noticed over the last 10 years, maybe 15 years, a massive change on transit here in Los Angeles. There is a more demand for transit amenities. And we know the council passed many policies, such as the mobility plan, and some great tools like Vision Zero, Safe Route to School, Aging in Place. Metro did their first and last mile. And of course, there was Measure M. So those are like major indications that things need to be done. And this program is helping with those goals. We are the doers of all these policies. But what's interesting is we're always very excited to talk about some very expensive and fancy installations and construction, but we need to remind ourselves that 75% of transit riders here in Los Angeles use the bus. 75% of people use the bus. The real mass transit system here in Los Angeles is the bus, because it goes to every neighborhood, regardless of socioeconomic, race, and locations, and because it reaches all these people in their place where they live, where they work, where they meet their family. So how can we help those transit riders, and how can we help the system as a whole? And bus shelters are part of those amenities. So obviously, this is a very simple structure, one bus shelter, it's simple. However, when you need to manage citywide, we need abundance. We need a lot of them, because the transit riders are dispersed in every single neighborhood. So we are for innovation. The bus shelters provide the shade, the seating, the lighting for safety, security, but innovation is also critical. How can we make the bus shelter smarter? So a few years ago, we worked with several people here in the city trying to do good things, developing the first smart shelter in the US, just here outside City Hall, and in every great street in Los Angeles. So those are type of amenities, but it can go beyond that. Sustainability is important, so we use a lot of LED lighting today. Recycling is important. Solar panels is important, and we have it. And we can provide additional amenities. We can work with, as a platform, and we can help third parties to integrate their service. Could be small cells, it could be sensors, it could be drinking fountains, it could be digital information kiosk. All these services can be incorporated with the bus zone. At the end of the day, we want to make the bus zone a better place to encourage people to travel. So, as mentioned in the report before, the bus shelter is the core mission of this contract, helping transit riders. But we also have other amenities, the public toilets. And we did some social innovation recently by having attendant. That has been working extremely well. The city report from the Board of Public Works and the CAO's office were outstanding. And recently, the council approved additional revenue to finance that service, in addition to the work that we're doing on a day-to-day basis. We've been flexible. We adapt. We adjust. Time change very fast. But we love to engage with your community in their neighborhood. Either we are on Western Avenue, either we are in Pacoima, either we are in Lincoln Heights or Mar Vista. We engage local community groups and we develop activations at the bus stop, artwork, for example, or new paintings to help foster a co-creation at the bus stop. And we understand there is always the fact of newness, like, oh, we can do something new, it's going to be better. We understand that. The newness is important. It has an effect for new contract, new term. That sounds ideal. But we have observed time and time again that what counts the most is when the newness fades away, what does it say? How does it serve the public, and how does it help the transit rider? The transit rider, based on our own observations, working on the street 7 days a week for the last 17 years, they want shade, lighting, benches as a core service. And we want the others as well, but this is the core service. So, since your direction, like almost a year ago, and the full council earlier this year, we were instructed to meet with the Bureau of Street Services, the CLA's office, and the city attorney. We met 19 times, 19 times. We have exchanged information, we have negotiated, there were some tensions, but it was fair, it was the way it's supposed to work, and we had reached agreement. And there was a report that was written and posted, then it was replaced with another report, and we understand that as well, and there is a report from the CLA's office. What we want to say, we love the process, we are open, we want fairness, we appreciate the time that we have today to discuss in public. If what we are negotiating over 19 times, plus email exchange and phone calls, is not what the city was expecting, just let us know. We can sit down and we can adjust, we can adapt. Those services are real and they benefit your constituent, not in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but today and in the next few weeks. So we have an opportunity in front of us today to continue the negotiation that we had for the last almost 2 years now, supported by the Controller's Office and the Council reports and the CLA report and the BSS report. So we think it's a great opportunity to do it today, sooner than later. And we are asking for your support again today to continue this negotiation and to approve a 10-year extension with the amenities that you are looking for and more importantly, that your constituents are expecting from us. Thank you.
I mean, that's the threshold question we're going to try to solve today, is whether or not we go back to negotiating and figure it out, or whether we move to a new RFP or some hybrid. Sure. So thank you. And please stand by. We may have questions for you and for the others. Next, our new General Manager for Street Services, Adele.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much, council members, Mr. Chair. It's an honor to be this is my first item before you since I took over on Monday, but I've been engaged in the work of street services the day the mayor offered me the job. I've been working hard, working with staff, reviewing reports, looking at issues since August 23rd when the mayor offered me this job, to be ready and to hit the road, and be ready to move on and address the issues. This is an important issue before us. You have directed us with specific instructions from your committee and council, approved it for us to look at amending the contract with specific requirements. At the same time, the mayor and your council charged me to transform the city network, the street network in Los Angeles, into a world-class network, including street furniture. And so this contract is important to our mission to making our streets a world-class streets. And I believe strongly that street furniture and information exchange at bus stops, at transit stops, at kiosks, and providing our residents, transit users, our visitors, way to learn about our city, access our transit system, know where to go, and also have access to toilets and water fountains is critical. And creating shades in our city, especially in the San Fernando Valley and places where it's really hot. Those are critical components that I see as your general manager, that's critical to our moving forward and moving the street infrastructure, the street network into a place that we all want to be at. So I applaud what I heard from the representative from JCDecaux. Some of the things they said is great and exciting, but it's not in the amendment that they provided to us. It's not what they offered to us. They gave us best and final offer as to take it or leave it. To me, it's not what we want. And as your general manager, I want to have a chance to really explore what else is out there, what else needs to be done, how can we best provide to our city residents the most revenue to improve our city, the most street furnitures that can provide shade, access, information. Homelessness is a huge issue. How can we provide toilets that can have attendant and safe place for people to use it? That was not in the agreement that we saw that came in as best and final offer. I'll give you, I'm not going to get through the details, but I'll just give you, we didn't get a clear carve-outs for the exclusive rights of advertising. That was not there fully. The solar-powered compacting trash receptacles that your instructions gave us to look at was not put forth. The revenue that projected fell short of what's expected. We're increasing the contract by 50%, but the revenue is going to increase by 16%. We supposed to get over the 20-year contract $150 million. We only got about $45 to $60 million, and we're supposed to get it in the future years. Most of what you see in the amendments is things that we were supposed to do in the previous 17 years, and now we want to do it in the next 10 years. We want to do something different. We want to be innovative. You asked specifically for increasing shades along bus transit stops. That was not provided. There was an increase maybe about adding more shelters, but most of them were the same as what we had before. Technology. We agree that what we have today, back in 2001, the smartphone was not available. Today, we need to have systems where our residents, our transit user can come to a bus stop, a transit stop, and push and say, what am I, how do I get to this? And I'll give you specific detail on the transit access, ways to get in, where to go, and can be really interactive, and we can provide us those things available. But only 12% of the shelters, as part of this amendment, are smart. 300 out of 2,500 are smart. We're not getting too much, 12% only. The attendant at toilets is a critical element. We know from our experience that without an attendant, public toilets will not be used. It's critical, we know that. Just we need to make it safe, clean, accessible. And that was not clearly. We're only adding 15 toilets to the 15 that were added before, to a number of 30, where we're supposed to have in the previous contract 150. So to me, what I'm saying is we are really cutting ourselves short. And I applaud the innovation from the contractor. I think we can do great things, but I think we fell short. The amended agreement and the best and final offer fell short from our expectations, your expectations in council, what you want us to do. And I think we need to really open the door and get out to the market and find out what's available. What other cities have done? Other cities have done a great job. There's a lot of work in Canada and New York and in Miami and other places where people are doing non-exclusive advertising, a lot of work to provide shelters, to provide digital information, and much larger revenue coming back to the city. So to me, I think I'm proposing that we test the market. We go out and put an RFP together. Let's see what's available. Let's get the best of the system that can give us a great world-class street furniture, street network with maximizing the revenue, providing us the most flexibility for advertising so we can provide public information to our residents that can help them in their daily life, and also providing equity across the board. Communities that are getting a lot of advertising should get a large portion of the information, but also communities that don't have the revenue for advertising should get adequate number of shelters. It shouldn't be just, we should try to get it, and I think we should integrate this as part of our sidewalks, streets, everything we're doing, complete streets. All that integration has to happen. So what I'm asking is to give me the ability to spend more time to review what's out there, and we may end up having the contractor here who is done, worked with us for the last 17 years back on the table. But I think they need to innovate. They need to step up and provide us what I think we deserve in Los Angeles. With that, I will be open for any questions.
Thank you. We'll do the questions at the end. Our Chairman of Public Works, Kevin James, you wanted to add as well?
There was a reference made by Mr. Neon who is the contractor, regarding the report that appeared on the clerk's website in late July, around July 27th, then disappeared, and then a new report appeared on August 31st. That obviously raised some questions with them, and I wanted to answer questions that you all may have about it. I'm the person that went to the city clerk's office and asked if I had the authority to remove what I will call the draft report that was submitted. And I want to tell you the 4 reasons that I did that. There are 2 procedural reasons and 2 substantive reasons. The procedural first. I serve as the board liaison to the Bureau of Street Services, and we were in transition in leadership, as you know, at BSS at the time that the draft report was initially submitted. As liaison to BSS, I wanted the new director, whoever that may be, to have the opportunity to have input in this important report. And my action enabled that to happen. In addition, I asked for the opportunity to review the draft report before it was submitted. Unfortunately, I was not afforded that opportunity. It was submitted prior to and without my opportunity to review it, and indeed submitted without even my knowledge. The substantive reasons. This council gave specific instructions to the Bureau in its amended motion of January 19th, 2018, as Mr. Haj Khalil just referenced. Several of those instructions were not addressed in the draft report. Also, items that were included in the draft report that were not asked for by the council's amended motions were there. And the final reason, and the second substantive reason, while the draft report listed the items that had been provided pursuant to the contract to date, The draft report failed to state in that context what goals and requirements of the existing contract are. Therefore, a fair picture and comparison of the work done pursuant to the existing contract was not provided in the draft report, and that concerned me as well. Those are the 4 reasons that I went to the clerk's office and had the initial draft report removed, and a subsequent report was submitted. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our last formal presenter is from Metro. We have a representative from Metro here.
Good afternoon, and thank you for the opportunity. My name is Robert Machuga, Senior Director with the Planning Department at Metro. I have here like to submit a letter of our position with regards to this item. I'd like to start off by saying Metro respectfully requests the opportunity to collaborate with the City of Los Angeles in the development of the City Coordinated Street Furniture Program request for proposals, specifically regarding the Metro's planned investment in the county-wide bus rapid transit network. A key supporting element of high-quality BRT is high-end rail-like stations. High-quality BR stations designed to accommodate higher ridership, offer additional passenger amenities, and conveys a permanence of brand that makes it easy for transit patrons to identify and locate in a street environment. In planning for future BRT investments, Metro would appreciate the opportunity to work with the City of Los Angeles to explore building higher-end BRT stations to ensure that the best product for our transit patrons and our communities. Metro's Vision 2028 strategic plan includes initiatives to convert strategic Metro rapid lines to BRTs and improve bus speeds. Currently, Metro has 3 BRT projects in the early planning phases. The Measure M expenditure plan includes additional funding of $50 million for BRT for each of the next 3 decades, and $100 million in each of the 4th and 5th decades of Measure M. Metro recently developed a system-wide station design guidance for rail systems to improve the rider experience and reinforce the Metro system brand. This system-wide design uses modular kit-of-parts approach that is adaptable and accommodate varying site conditions and easy to maintain. Metro seeks to extend the use of these kit-of-parts approaches to our BRT systems for the benefit of our transit patrons. Metro has had an excellent working relationship with the Bureau of Street Services and your current contract with J.C. Decaux. Nevertheless, there have been numerous mobility innovations since the contract was first awarded that at times limited our ability to provide the best mobility solutions for the region. We believe that early and frequent collaboration for the development of this RFP will vastly improve outcomes for our transit patrons and communities. So with that being said, what we're looking for is just really an opportunity to just be at the table and continue collaborating the good relationship that's been established with BSS on the development of future BRT stations.
Great, thank you. One quick question for you, and most of the questions are probably for our other folks, but has Metro been involved in the discussions of the contract extension?
Yes, my understanding they have been.
Okay, but has Metro's concerns been satisfied in the contract extension discussion, or you're saying there needs to be more from Metro's perspective that happens in an RFP?
If we could continue those collaborations, and if there could be more of them, just in order to make sure that the needs of the BRT system, the network, are
so Metro is weighing in, asking for a new RFP. It's just not exactly clear to me. Is that the bottom line? What Metro is requesting?
Well, either way, whether the contract stays with J.C. Decaux or if it goes on to a future RFP, we just want to make sure that we're having the opportunity to be involved.
Okay, great. Thank you. Appreciate it. So, colleagues, I've got a million questions, but I want to be respectful of all of us. So I'm going to try to ask just one or two, and then have each of us limit ourselves to one or two, and we'll do round robin multiple times. I always say that, and sometimes it doesn't work, and then people go. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at everybody equally, but you a little bit. Okay, well then I can start with 10 questions. No. why don't we start with Adele? No, Adele, wanted to ask you specifically the opportunities. To be real clear, what are the opportunities that an RFP provides that we wouldn't have in contract extension negotiation?
Great. I think to me the RFP is really going out and asking for what's the best out there. What it does, it allows innovation companies across the country, the world, to provide us their best and show us something that we may not even be aware of here. So it's really can give us the ability to test the market, look for technology, look for successful methods and tools, and look for the revenue comparison. To me, that's critical, is what other revenue has been received. So increased revenue is critical. Greater levels of transit shelter is critical for us. The non-exclusive advertising is critical. Bringing technology into it and more quality of life components to our shelters, shade, water, all these things are critical. The issue with getting the best revenue to the city and ensuring that we're getting revenue, because the more revenue we get, the more investment we can put into our street network and infrastructure. And it's linking what we're doing to also our priorities in the city, addressing homelessness and public bathrooms and innovative ways. The automated public toilets may not be what we want. Maybe something else with an attendant. You know, it could be something simpler, cheaper. And so the going out to the market, getting the innovative ideas and successful programs across the world to come together and provide us options and tools and the ability to maximize revenue and provide the best system, a world-class system that we can pick and choose, and we can negotiate the best contract based on what we see before us.
What about in terms of equity? That was one of the issues that you meant. How would the contract extension produce equitable distributions, street furniture throughout the city versus an RFP, or is there a difference in how those can be?
Yeah, I still think that a lot of this, the city, there's a lot of discrepancy in how many shelters we have right now, and with the addition, we still have some discrepancy. To me, I think we need to ensure that areas in the city that are having the maximum revenue from the advertising and getting the maximum advertising are getting the benefit. At the same time, parts of the city that are not generating revenue are getting what they need. So it's a balance that needs to be done. That is right now here is not able to do that. I want to be able to ensure that communities that are not generating revenue for advertising can get the same benefits across the board. So that balance, we can do that in the RFP. We can't do it as part of this contract.
Thank you. I've got a million questions. I'm going to turn to Ms. Rodriguez for a couple of questions, and I'll come back. And you can ask, obviously, any of the presenters. We're not just going to limit ourselves to Adele, as excited as we are here.
Well, Adele, since you're up here, I'm just going to ask you very quickly. In terms of fully realizing the opportunities for revenue generating, what has been some of the historic obstacles that have contributed, in your opinion, to us not fully realizing the revenue? And I ask that, prefacing my question with you knowing that I was on the Board of Public Works, and that we oftentimes had a number of locations that were requested to be removed or relocated or to not be placed in many areas that potentially could be revenue generating as part of this conversation. So what is your...
Yeah, it's a good question. It's, but if you look at, and this is my question, when I looked at the installations over the last 17 years of the contract, most of the installation occurred 2004 to 2009, basically. Nothing before and nothing basically after. There's minor stuff, minimum stuff. Until recently, 2016, we saw a little blip. So I think, to me, the responsibility goes on both, on the contractor themselves, but also on us as a city. We need to be responsive in permitting and allowing locations. And I think to me with this RFP process, even right now with this amended contract, it's still going to have an issue with where we locate these things and how we're going to put them. And actually, the question that's before you as a policymakers, do you want to give up your ability to veto or allow this shelter to be in location or not? Right now with the amendment, that's taken away from you as council members, except for the APT. Everything else is that veto is not part of this, has been taken away from with the amendment takes away from you, council members. So to me, we need to understand, and the RFP will allow us to create a process where we can strategically locate these shelters in advance and get them worked out and planned, so we're not trying to guess and trying to figure out what we're going to put every day, every year. It should be a long-term plan that we all agree to as part of our street network expansion and what we're trying to do. So I think the issue we had is two ways. I think the contractor, focused in the beginning and kind of we didn't see anything in the end. And I think our city process may have gotten in the way. We need to figure out how to address that and optimize it while protecting the interests of the community and the council office. We can't compromise that. But if we do advanced planning and we do RFP and work very hard on locating these things in advance and getting all of them approved in clear way, I think we can get these done quickly, because we can't spend 10 years, 20 years building these things. It has to be done quickly to realize the revenue and get the services to the people.
Yeah. Well, and I just want to thank you for answering that honestly, because the reality is that it's not fully placed on the contractor, that many times it has been the city that has stood in the way of really fully realizing the potential for revenue given the restrictions that we've put on it. That said, going to the smart shelter, something that I actually know a lot about because I was leading that call to innovating the shelters, and I actually want to ask Metro to come back, if they would please. Hi. So one of the innovations that we discussed, even at the first, after the first installation of the smart shelter, which exists right now at Grand Park, there was supposed to be a digital kiosk. Metro had been piloting a digital kiosk. This innovation, conversations on innovation is not new. This is a conversation that has been going on for a couple of years, and we have piloted a lot of that innovation at some of these smart shelters. With DECO's help and the Bureau of Street Lighting, we were able to implement several locations throughout the city of Los Angeles and promoting these primary locations on the great streets. That said, one of the items that has never been installed, which was with Metro's commitment, was the installation of a digital touchpad pilot at that Grand Park site. So my question is, where are, we talk about innovation, we talk about having, to be in the fold. Those are conversations that were in the fold going back about 2.5, 3 years ago. And they still have not realized. So where is Metro in the conversation of installation of those kiosks? Because that opportunity has presented itself and existed and was requested for partnership more than 2.5 years ago.
And yes, to answer that question, my apologies, I don't have the specifics of that. That's that specific pilot project. I will ensure that I take that back to Metro and we address that comment. But one of the big items that we're here requesting is really making sure that we have that opportunity to create those abilities that are back in 2001 when the contract was executed. These innovation elements weren't kind of thought of, or the technology wasn't available. Same thing with bike share and BRT. So by having the ability to come in and really identify some of potential elements and integrate them into the RFP or the current, whatever which way it goes, that gets addressed and those conversations can continue without difficulties.
I mean, that was during this current contract that we've had executed, and those conversations had occurred, and it was invited, for participation at that location, and it just never materialized. But that wasn't as a restriction of the existing contract. That was just an unfulfilled part of what Metro said that they would do on their side. So I'm just, so I think the opportunity is there, is what I'm getting at.
Duly noted. Thank you.
That's good for now.
turn on my mic. You know, and Adele, I'm going to preface by saying I feel bad for you that you have to be here, you have to sit here and legitimize this because you just got there, and the guy that you want to pin it on is no longer here. So, but having said that, and I heard what the commissioner had to say, but so in terms of your office, why would you release a report in July that shows that you were making progress on an agreement, only to release a report a month later to say that exactly the opposite, that we're going in a different direction? That is what makes me uncomfortable about this process, is you issue, you know, I feel like you're negotiating in good faith, you issue a report, that disappears, you issue a different report a month later, and subsequently the CLA's office is directed to submit another report in September to talk about what we should be negotiating in case this body decides to open this back to RFP. That is what doesn't look good.
Sure. And let me address it because I asked that question. The initial report that came out was not ready to go out. It's premature.
There is two sides. I mean, I'm looking at the report. I mean, there's the one on July 26th,
Sure.
and then there's the one a month after. It was signed off by the same guy.
I agree. And the to me, as I think you've heard from the commissioner, but let me put that aside. Many times, I think, and I, as a new general manager, I'm not going to go back to whoever is in charge. I'm the responsible person to you, accountable to you. If the previous report, the July report, was before you today, I would be here before you today telling you that report is not in alignment of what I want to do under your charge. I would say that. I would probably submit the same report that you saw submitted to you later on and withdraw on that one. I had an issue myself when I looked at the amended information. My question was completely saying, weren't we supposed to do this in the first 16 years, and now we need additional 10 years, 13 years to do some of that work? To me, I felt uncomfortable that we're trying to get a 50% extension in time to do the work we were supposed to do before, and a lot of it were not done. The toilets, for example, we're supposed to do 150. We did 15 the first 16 years, 17 years, and with this additional 10 years, we're going to do additional 15. I'm not comfortable with it, and if you know what happened, the process, I'm dealing with the process within my office as to the review process and the approval. We're putting the mechanism in place and the controls in place, but I would tell you, even if the second report was not submitted, I would have been before you submitting a removal to the previous report and amending with a new report that exactly says, I want to be able to go out with an RFP.
So my second question, Mr. Chair, before you move on to Mr. Rue, I'm sure you have questions, right? Yeah. Is who instructed then the CLA to submit a report? Because the instruction was to complete negotiations. So at what point was the CLA instructed to do that? And they go even further in that CLA report. They go as far as asking for an analysis of the Buscaino and Bonin motion that on digital interactive media kiosk, when that motion was killed in council 11-2. So why are we even going as far as making an analysis of that motion that died in council? It was referred to this committee, but we haven't even heard it.
Yeah, I'm not the person to answer. The CLA should be able to answer that question.
How is it?
Hello, Matthias Bartham for the Office of the CLA. In answer to your question, Council instructed the CLA to assist Bureau of Street Services with the negotiations. So we did sit in on the negotiations, but we just felt that Council know what the best and final offer was from J.C. Deco since the original report was retracted. I just want to clarify that the current contract does still have 3 years left in the contract, so we're still looking at 2019, 2020, and 2021. If the 10-year extension is granted, Deco has agreed to make the terms of the 10-year extension effective immediately. So then for the final 3 years of the contract, you would see increased street furniture. You would see the increased revenue share from 20 to 25%. You would also see the increased trash pickups and the power wash on the shelters. And when this program was initially put together, the main focus was to create a transit shelter program that would be self-funded, and that was the whole intent of the program. So this new amended contract would still provide for that, If council does decide to go out to an RFP, that's what we just highlighted in our report, was if we include all of the services that are currently provided by the current contract, it's likely you may only have one person submit a bid to that contract, two at most. And that's the part, if council does decide to go into RFP, there would need to be some guidance provided as far as how to break up the services that are currently provided by the current contract. If you have any additional questions, I'm here to answer them.
Great.
Okay. All right.
It's true. And stand by, we'll have lots of additional
Right, actually, the CLA could stay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple of questions. So, I think the CLA, yeah. Oh, you got more questions? You got more questions?
Go ahead. We're going to do round robin. So.
Oh, really?
Just gonna
Oh,
get
because
more
I got
questions.
like 7.
So ask one or two
All right,
now,
all right.
and then we'll keep going
I'll
around.
just keep it there. All right. So, how long has this contract been in negotiations for?
Well, it was for a few months after council instructed city staff to negotiate within 120 days.
So, it's just been 120 days since this negotiation began?
Yes, from the time we started, and of course there was holidays in there, but roughly that amount of time.
So, this is roughly 120 days. And you answered my second question about how much time is left in the contract, which is 3 years. If we did go to an RFP, how much time does the city staff or city departments need to actually do a full-on RFP and get it contracted and ready to go?
That would be more a question for street services, but there would need to be some time to see the draft RFP and let council consider if there are components council would want removed from the RFP and go off and be its own separate RFP, or include additional items in that RFP.
Anyone else could jump in. I mean, are we talking 6 months? Are we talking 2 years? What are we talking about?
I would say maximum of 2 years. You probably should look at, it's a probably complex RFP. It's not simple RFP with the review, proposals, interviews, process, probably looking at 2 years. So if we start from now, it'll take us probably till 2020, 2021 to have a new contract in place and ready to go.
About 2 years, and we've got 3 years left on the current contract.
2 years, yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to do, so if we did do a RFP process, and anyone could answer this, will it be competitive? And the reason I asked that was because I believe previously when my office contacted BSS, there was concerns that there might not be enough companies at this caliber to take on such a contract. So would it be competitive?
The answer, Councilman, is yes. And there's actually tools that can be implemented to ensure we receive multiple proposals. Just to read to you a number of companies available that can, Clear Channel, Asphalt Media, Lucid Management Group, and Bronco are some of these ones across the country and the world that are doing the work. But also we can put in incentives to ensure that that the proposals are not just being wasted, because a lot of money will be spent on a proposal. So the city can actually figure out a way how to share some of the costs of the proposal to incentivize a good proposal to come to us to ensure, because there's a huge amount of money on the table for us as a revenue for the city. So putting a $50,000 share for a good proposal is probably will be to the benefit of the city. So we'll come up with creative ideas. RFPs are competitive, but you're getting the best value, not the best price. So many components are reviewed. You open the door to creative ideas, revenue sharing, some of the things, and exit strategy. To me, the biggest thing is if the city should always have the ability to terminate a contract and know exactly how much they have to pay to buy out the contract. In the existing contract, that was not clear. And that's something that we struggle with. We should be able to always know at any point the city council should be able to make a decision to shift gear, shift contract. We should be able to have these measures in the RFP.
Okay. So I'll just stop here. Oh, you want me to go?
Okay, we'll go around. Adele, while you're up, question on the timing. In terms of how long it would actually take to issue a new RFP, because I've in conversations with JC Deco, they basically said it would take us years, 5 years or more, before we would ever actually see a new RFP, and I want to get your sense of, realistically, something as big as this with all of the elements that we're talking about, how long would it take us to get our head around all of that, put it, write up the RFP, put the RFP out, and get a response?
I think we will put the resources on it. I would say somewhere by July of 2019, you'll have an RFP out.
July of 2019, and then it would be like a 6-month RFP?
Yeah, probably with interviews and stuff, and then approval process and evaluation.
So you're confident that if we were to go to RFP, by the time this contract ended in 3 years, we would have a new, either the J.C. Deco or a different company lined up and ready to go?
Yes.
With that, and it would be seamless?
Yes.
Okay. The veto issue that you mentioned, could you expand on that?
Yeah, it's a dual thing. Is in the existing contract prior to the amendment, the council offices had the ability to approve or disapprove a location. In the process that you have before you, which was intended to expedite the process of installation, except for the APTs or the toilets, that has been taken away. So to me, it's a policy decision where I think you need to be able to have that say, maybe not on a one-by-one, maybe on a group of locations, but the input from the community and the council offices is critical. In this part of my understanding with the amendment, that ability to say no to a location by the council office where the location is being proposed, the furniture is being installed, has been taken away.
Is that something that could be, if we sent you back to negotiate further, is that something that could be negotiated, that where if we didn't go the RFP, if we went the negotiation route, is that something that could be negotiated to get to a point of our satisfaction?
Sure.
Okay. Are there any particular issues that really couldn't be negotiated that would have to be RFP?
To me, it's the level of effort, what you're getting, the number of shelters and things you're getting and the revenue you're getting is not what I think we can get somewhere else with another contract. I think we are trying to take a broken car and trying to repair it to take us for the next 10 years. And I think we need to figure out, should we go and salvage the car and buy a new car, or still use that 20-year-old car and put maybe new tires on trying to still make it run? For us in the city, it's not going to work. It's not going to work because we have an old contract and I'm looking at the number of what we're going to get delivered over the next additional 13 years. In many cases, it's falling short of what was committed for the first contract, a 20-year contract that was not done. So to me, I'm not sure we're given 10 more years to give them a chance to do what they're supposed to have done in the first 20 years. I'm struggling. There's a lot of things that are not in place. The washing of the shelters, 15% of them will get one additional wash a year, extra. It's not what's being presented to. I heard the representative from J.C. Deco, which I applaud what he said here. It's not what's in the amendment contract. I wish they came in with a fresh look, with fresh ideas, with trying to partner with us, as they said, and give us a world-class contract, a world-class street furniture. I don't see it in this amendment, and we owe it to you to give you something, and to our ratepayers and residents that we're proud of.
Ms. Martinez.
In the July report, it states that J.C. Deco would provide a number of enhancements to the existing shelters, including the technology upgrades that you talked about. So I'm confused. How, on July 26th, is J.C. Deco able to provide enhancement services and technologies, but a month later in your August report, it was deemed necessary by your department to modernize the program?
I see what the confusion.
Yeah.
I asked a question on that one. So let me
because you even, I'm sorry to cut you off, but you even say that the proposed amendment provides for the installation of these 200 digital media panels. So how is it that JCDecaux is not adequately integrating new technologies such as digital signs and so on that you're requesting? When they've said, based on the July report, that they've proposed the 200 signs.
Yeah, and I acknowledge there's 200
Okay.
signs, digital signs being added. 200 signs out of 2,500. Okay, 200 out of 2,500,
Sure.
10%. So is that what we want? If you look at just purely a number, 200 is a good number. 300 is a good number. But 300 out of what is the issue? Are we willing? So technology, you're getting basically 12% of the digital upgrades you're getting on the panels. You're getting 10%, 11% of the entire street furniture. I think that's small, especially nowadays with our technology, what we have. So 300, in somebody's view, could have been good. In my view, it's not.
So can you give me concrete examples of specific technology which you want them to develop that is not currently being implemented? What specific technologies are you referring to?
I'll give you an example, and I'm just telling you as a person that, walks the streets. But just, imagine if you are a resident, a transit user, a visitor, you go to a shelter, and you need to find where to go. You should be able to go to an interactive information panel that you can push to tell you where you are, and you say, I want to go to location X. It should tell you, I walk in, you can walk this way. If you want to go in the metro, you can go this way. If you want to go on the bus, you can take bus this. And then you say, okay, what others information I need? Where is the police station? Where is whatever we need to do? Those are things that are basic information. And I even asked if you need to order a ride share, you can actually, from your spot, order a ride share if that's what you want as a choice. To me, it's getting that information available to the user to ensure, and maybe there's information about other things that we want to get out as a city to our users, that we should be able to put that. We heard talk about water fountains. That's critical. Water fountains in shelters in hot days with shade is critical. It's not here.
So Adele, do you believe that these technologies should take precedence over actually building shelters?
It should be integrated in them, yes. They can't be in the shelters. The shelter that we're seeing across the world is no longer the just basic roof. It needs to have more features to it. And if we can
There's
integrate...
parts in my district that don't even have transit shelters,
And
let alone the technology that comes along with it. So why don't we start with getting the shelters there to begin with?
100%, I agree with you. Shelters and equity and ensuring the city, no matter where you are, should have a shade over you and a place to drink water. And if there's a place that you can get information, please get it. It's critical. It's basic level of quality of life that we need to provide, yes.
I don't know you're trying. I know you're really trying, but
I'm
having a hard time believing you.
But let's look at, let me get to
I
this.
know you're trying. So, Mr. Chair, I have other questions for JCDecaux because you're not off the hook either. But I'm going to wait. Mr. Sir, I'm going to wait my turn because I'm going to follow the rules. So I don't know who's next.
Appreciate you following
Yeah,
the rules.
I'm trying really hard.
Mr. Rue.
Actually, I have a question for JCDecaux too, but a little bit. This is a question for JCDecaux. Do you want to ask your JCDecaux question first? Can I just ask? Okay. All right.
Just trying to keep it moving, that's all.
Right, and I think this question was already answered, but I just wanted to reconfirm. And I believe I think it was a CLA's presentation, and in the report, it talked about right-of-way and advertising on right-of-ways, and having the exclusive right on that, and in particular for kiosks. I just want to be clear. I want to make sure. I was under the impression that JCDecaux is not willing to give up the advertising rights for the kiosk, and that is a no-go? Or is that something that you are willing to negotiate?
So what we negotiated for the bike share with the kiosk, we are one of the largest bike share company in the world. We built bike shares. We invented that actually. So what we said, we encourage Metro to find a sponsor for their bike share here
So
in
not,
downtown.
okay, I'm sorry to cut, yeah, not the bike share, but earlier on, Councilman Buscaino brought in an amendment to carve out the kiosks,
Okay.
right?
Yes, I'm with you.
So that piece, and that piece will have its own, I mean, could potentially have its own advertising, but I was informed that if that happens, then J.C. Deco is a no-go on this. So where are you on that?
Yes, our position is we welcome the interactive digital information kiosk. We build them, we show them to Public Works and the CLA's office and the city attorney, but it was not meant to be included in that amendment because of the motion that was passed at the council, and we never really seen the exact proposal. It was just an idea. But we said that we were willing to incorporate any information kiosks that provide apps for directions, weather, civic information, neighborhood information. We can incorporate those kiosks inside the bus shelter or next to it. So I think when the councilwoman referred to the kiosk here outside City Hall, I've worked personally with Metro, and I know Metro bought the kiosk, bought the screen, but it's never been installed so far. So I don't know where it is exactly, but it was an experiment. I think what's important to notice overall, if I may, is time have changed. Things are moving so fast. Right. We will never, ever be able to lock a contract with one thing forever. There is no planning possible.
But the bottom line is you're willing to talk about that and negotiate that, right? Okay.
We sit down 19 times.
Yeah.
And we agreed on a report of July.
19 times over a span of 120 days.
Since January, yes.
Okay.
I believe CLA you wanted to add to this issue? Go ahead.
Hi. I just wanted to provide some clarification. So in response to Councilmember Rue's question,
please.
The Buscaino motion specifically addressed digital interactive kiosks, which are advertising based, so they would be revenue generating. What we discussed that proposal with the contractor, and what they relayed to us is that they do not have a problem with digital kiosks are purely for informational purposes. What they objected to was advertising-based digital interactive kiosks because it interferes with this exclusivity.
But J.C. Deco is willing to negotiate that out, right? Because I do agree when that motion was introduced in council, many of us had heartburn. I mean, I support it, but many of us have heartburn because it was so last minute, right? But at the same time, I do support the digital kiosks and separating that out. And again, because it's separate now, that's another thing that everyone needs to work on. But if they need advertising or some sort of advertising, I don't know what, to generate their model, then I just want to know if J.C. Deco is willing to. I mean, we don't have to make that decision now, clearly. And of course, that was at council. It was kind of unfair. So, but are they willing to negotiate that and discuss that further?
Not advertising-based kiosks. What was included?
I think they are willing to. Yeah.
All right, let's let Mr. Hahn, go ahead if you would answer, and then we'll clarify.
Out front the we didn't, during the negotiation, it was not meant to be a big part. It was more about bus shelters and services. Right. So, and we haven't seen anything. We have no data.
So it's on the table, right?
If we have to go back and discuss, it's on the table. But we have seen no data. We don't know how many, where, when, and the size. I mean, we know nothing. So I just heard the news digital kiosk, but I know nothing about the specifics.
Okay. So
the exclusivity, I think it's important for you, and I'm hearing you. It's a big item. I understand. We understand. What does exclusivity does for you? It allows you to finance a transit amenity service equitably in every neighborhood, regardless of race and social economics. That's the benefit. That's a benefit of the exclusivity. But the exclusivity, when you think about it, if you step back 2 minutes. You have 6,000 advertising benches. You have thousands and thousands and thousands of streetlight banners. You've got billboards all over. You've got advertising on the buses, Metro, Culver City, Blue Bus, DOT. You've got advertising on the tourist bus, the fake tourist buses. You got advertising.
I agree.
On the
I want to
Palisade.
keep it moving. I want to keep it moving for the chair because I want to ask my one more question. But so my whole point is I want to make sure that you're willing to come to the table to discuss some of this further. And that's the bottom line that question was. I had one other procedural question. You know, does this contract need to be reviewed by the Public Works Board, or rather, actually, why was it not shared? Because I'm concerned how the president of Public Works wasn't able to at least see the report before.
I would defer to Mr. Jordan on whether or not the contract comes back to the Board of Public Works. My gut on it procedurally says it does. Ted?
But the specific council instruction in January of 2018
May bypass us.
was to the Bureau of Street Services to work with the CLA and the City Attorney's Office to complete those negotiations and bring it back directly to the City Council. So typically, though, a contract, because the original contract was signed off by the President of the Board of Public Works back in 2001, and then was approved by Council as a long-term contract, requires Council approval. So in the ordinary course of things, this would go through the Board of Public Works. In this case, the Council instruction was directly to Street Services to work with the CLA and the City Attorney's Office. So that's why that particular thing sort of bypassed the Board of Public Works. But as a general contract or RFP, if that's the direction the council wants it to go, it'll go through the Board of Public Works just like every other.
Right. So this is my last statement, and this goes to the point. And, you know, I'm a little disturbed because when the council does motions, sometimes we have to list all the departments, and, you know, we're assuming, and this goes to a bigger discussion that we're having on something else, right? We're assuming that the city family, even if they're not necessarily listed as please work with so-and-so departments, and some department is actually should be involved and is not listed, they should also be included somehow. So I'm just a little disturbed how it didn't, in this case, it looks clear that it bypassed Public Works, but doesn't mean that it should have not been shared. So that is, and this goes to what, and I don't want to reiterate what Councilwoman Martinez said earlier, but I'm a little disturbed because the report that we got says that there was 95% agreement, and, you know, there were 5% short of actual final agreement, and it looked like it was, last time when it came here, we thought it was pretty much done, but today, clearly, it seems half-baked. So, and at the same time, I do acknowledge, and I agree with President Kevin James that we do have a new director. And it is very vital that he has a say in it and has a chance to thoroughly vet it and look at it. But at the same time, the previous director, Nazario, was a good guy too. So I don't know exactly what happened here, and obviously he's not here to speak for himself. But yeah, so those are my concerns, and I think you have some recommendations, and I'd like to hear what the chair's thoughts are on where to go.
In terms of trying to land this plane, and I'm can continue asking questions. I'm not cutting anybody short, but I'm just trying to think of, part of the issue is whether or not what you're coming to us with is the best and final offer, and then it's a question of do we reject it, so to speak, and go to RFP? And what we're hearing is that maybe there is room for more of a best and final offer and more of a negotiation. So perhaps we can send this back for a very time-limited period, because we don't want this to draw on forever, to see if we can't get to an agreement that we can all live with. Obviously, whatever agreement's going to have to come back to us, and it should go to the Board of Public Works as well. And we may get that and say this does not satisfy all of our needs and want to go back out to RFP. And that is still a very viable option. And I know it's something that Street Services is asking for, and I also have great respect for our new general manager and want to make sure you have all the tools that you need to be a success and to make this program a success. So maybe we give you a little bit of time to come up with the best, a little bit more negotiation to see if there is a way to get to all the things that we want through a contract extension. And then if that plane can't land, to keep using the same metaphor, we come back and then we're a little bit more confident about moving with this, with a new RFP. That would be one option. And I get the sense that's where most of my colleagues on the committee want to go in that direction. Is that, generally speaking, where folks want to go? Okay, so that's kind of where we're headed, but I want to keep questions going if we have them. I mean, I have a couple more, but I think, Nuri, you were next if you wanted to have another question.
So I have a question for J.C. DeCo. Two more questions, and then I will end with that. So, sir, you are projecting anywhere between $8 and $12 million in revenue per year moving forward, correct?
Correct.
But the average program only really produces about $4 million annually since 2000. So a 10-year extension projects $130 million, according to what I'm reading. So how can we be sure that you're actually going to deliver on this scale when the original contract called for $150 million worth of revenue over the last 20 years, and you've fallen short of that?
Sure. The original contract was an up to. The money, the number of bus shelters, kiosks, public toilets, was based on permits.
Based on permits?
Permits.
Okay.
And it was, everybody played in good faith. We were, everybody, the city, the staff,
so
the council.
So this is an impediment that the city has put upon you, and why you haven't been able to...
Yes, it's not only on me, it's a policy decision. We approved it, you approved it, we agreed.
Okay, this is being honest.
Yes,
I mean, it's
yes,
fine. I mean,
it.
criticizing a department or this council, I don't have a problem with that.
No.
So you're saying that this had to do with city issuing permits?
Yes.
Okay.
The contract was an up to, and depending on the number of permits that we will have gotten over the first 2 years, and then otherwise there is a mechanism in the contract to adjust the number of services and the money, and we already paid on time what we were supposed to pay. It's every year. So.
All right, and so then my final question, I guess, you can elaborate on this. So Adele, you touched upon this, Adele, about the initial goal of the program was to construct 150 automated public toilets, but currently, as we stand, you've only really constructed 15, correct?
We did 15.
So then, in the 10-year extension, that calls for another 15.
Yes.
So why would you build another 10% of what you have initially promised in facilities?
So we have promised 150, and we would have been more than happy to install 150 and to maintain them. We built 15 because we got 15 permits.
Okay, so it goes back to us not
that.
issuing the permits.
And in the future, we were told that maybe the city doesn't really need public bathrooms, but we know what's going on. There is like a lot of needs, obviously. So we proposed 15 more as part of the negotiation, and the team negotiating thought it was kind of a fair deal. If council wants more or less,
because, by 2030, with 30 automated public toilets installed, you would have built one toilet per year since we signed the initial contract.
Yes.
That's a joke.
Ask us to build more, we'll do it.
All right. That's fair enough. That's fair.
There is a need.
Got it.
Things have changed on the public toilet since we introduced the attendant. It's a social innovation. It works. Okay. I've done it in San Francisco for the last 2 years. I brought the team from San Francisco here in Los Angeles. It works in San Francisco beautifully. It works beautifully here in Los Angeles. And those are part of the things that you cannot have in your contract. The contract has to be built about flexibility, because over the years, we're going to learn, we're going to test, we're going to try, and you need partners to dance together to provide additional benefit to your constituent year in, year out. You cannot lock yourself, or we don't think we can lock, or we should lock ourselves into specific terms for the next 6 years, 10 years, 20 years. Mm-hmm. Things are changing too fast. We need to evolve and to be more innovative.
That's fair. All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Chair, I don't have an issue with asking the department to continue to negotiate with J.C. DeCo necessarily, but I want to make it very clear that if we're going to be playing games, going back and forth, and not negotiating in good faith, then we need to move on and make that decision as a council. I'm very uncomfortable with the process by which these different moving parts of reports were dealt with. But I'm willing to send it back and say, keep negotiating in good faith and hopefully come back with a deal, at which point I think this body is going to have to make a decision. Thank you.
Well, and our alternative at this point is either negotiate or go do a completely new RFP, because we need to have something come to us that we can live with. And when it does, there may be things that we're going to send back after the negotiations happen that we're going to want to continue. And I imagine one of the big issues has to do with council input, because that is one of the biggest stumbling blocks to to a lot of the street furniture from actually getting out there. And of course, you can remove that stumbling block and cut us out completely, but then that also creates all sorts of problems for us and our communities and our constituents who want, our stakeholders want to have some say over this. So that's a delicate balance we're going to have to figure out, and it doesn't seem like we have figured that out in this process quite yet, and that's going to be probably one of the key components. Mr. Nahan, I did have a question about the revenues. If you could come back for a moment. Understanding what's been said, that a lot of the shortfalls have to do with the fact that we didn't have the permits. But there is an issue. The average city revenue with JC2Co is in LA is in the 20% range. But in other cities across the nation, it's closer to 40%. Why are we getting so much less? And are you willing to negotiate a higher percentage for LA?
Yes. So every cities, every contract has different terms and conditions. Here in Los Angeles, the city is so vast, the diversity of the place, the magnitude of the place, you need to finance the service everywhere. When you look at the map with factual data of where the bus shelters were and where we installed the new one, you have a pretty good picture that we did a very good effort working with Public Works from day one to spread the service and the maintenance everywhere without looking into it. So some cities have a very strong downtown with tons of real estate, retail, tourists. In Los Angeles, the beauty is different, so it's spread. So we had to spread the money differently. And then in this amendment, we went to 25%, and then up to 50% above a certain threshold.
After the threshold. I guess
because we thought it was a fair process. The next negotiating team told us, yes, but if you make more money, if the business is good, you cashed everything. So we said, okay, to that level, we pay 25%. Above, you get 50%.
I guess what I'm saying, and this is something for everyone to consider when they go back to the negotiations, one thing we are all united in LA is we want the best deal. We're bigger and better than every other city, and damn it, we want the best deal. So when we see the numbers that are lower percentage-wise, that gets our back up.
Yes.
Now, I understand what you're saying, which is that maybe if you were to monetize the benefits that we're getting by spreading out those services, that maybe that takes our actual percentage of benefit up, and that we are equal or higher than the other percentage that these other cities are getting. But I guess when this contract comes back, I want to see the math to do that, because I don't want to have a contract where New York is getting 40% and we're getting 20%. If we're only getting 20% and you're telling me we're actually get that other 20%, we're getting 25%, but it's spread out in goods and services because we're getting areas that don't have the advertising traffic, but we're getting the maintenance, that's great. We can accept that, but we want to see, bottom line, we want the math to add up that we're getting a better deal than every other city because we're better than every other city.
We understand. We agree.
Okay. You agree that LA is better than every other city? You said it. That's it. No taking it back. Yeah. We. Yeah. Okay. Colleagues, we have a lot on the agenda, and this is just one. Are we ready to land this, or you?
Right. Yeah. Oh, you want to?
Go ahead.
I thank you, Mr. Chair, and to my colleagues. I think you've given some very thoughtful, added some very thoughtful conversation to this very important topic. Councilwoman Martinez and I have probably the highest ridership of public transportation users in the county, and so part of what has been very frustrating, and it's been clearly discussed by my colleagues here, is the lack of transparency in this conversation right now with the negotiation in good faith, and then what has come out with these various reports. It's just frustrating. In my experience previously, and again, I think it goes back to when we want to fully realize the financial opportunities that exist, we can't stand in the way of the installations happening. And that is when we will fully realize the value of this contract. But until that happens, we're going to continue to be in this cycle. For the, as it relates to the conversation with RFPs, I have yet to see an RFP that gets issued that quickly in the city of Los Angeles thus far, given all of the other lingering pieces of the conversation that would ensue with a new RFP being issued. And that is with, as it relates to the existing furniture and whatever happens as a result. Given that we're staring down the pipeline of the Olympics and everything that we've got coming on in this city, it gives me a lot of trepidation to consider an alternative at this time. But I am looking forward to a successful and fruitful conversation in the continued negotiation talks. But again, I just, if not to go on the record to say that the way these reports were managed was really, it was terrible. And I think to have this kind of process in place was just foul. And I'm not real happy with it, but I look forward to the continued negotiations and this being finally put to bed.
Mr. Chair, I just want to add an additional, I'm in agreement with you, but I wanted to add an additional instruction because I do see valid points on both sides of the argument, whether we go RFP or we renegotiate. But I want to make sure, and I think the more important thing is, I think we heard it from J.C. Deco, Adele wants to take a look at it. We got a letter from the controller who has input and thoughts on it. Metro is willing to work. So the more important thing is everyone's willing to renegotiate. However, as Councilman Rodriguez just stated, we want to give them enough time to have real substantive talks, but we don't want to make it too long because if we do have to go down that RFP route, I mean, they said 2 years, but who knows how long it's going to take. So I really would like some sort of a condensed, I know you guys went to the table 19 times. It's going to be the 20th time, but I want some sort of condensed time frame so we could hear it in this
30
committee.
days.
30 days sounds good to me. I mean, I don't know if the department and everybody else. But also, during this renegotiation, I want to make it clear that, you know, the three options that are on the table, if we went to RFP, were all bad. So in the event that the renegotiation doesn't go well, there needs to be better options for the city as well as the potential future successor. Because, for example, you know, the options of, I don't want to get into details, but removing all the furniture or buying it, I mean, that should not be our decision. That should just be a business-to-business decision, and we should have enough flexibility on the city side to make sure that if we do go out and if we ultimately do the RFP, that we're not hindered by requiring them to remove everything or sell everything at market rate. I mean, there needs to be enough flexibility so that if we do have a successor, that they have an opportunity to negotiate themselves. So things like that, there needs to be more flexibility because we don't know what's going to happen. So that has to really be flushed out as well, not just the current contract, because if I hope negotiations go well, but if it doesn't, we have to prepare for step 2 in advance. So I want to make sure that that is taken into consideration because those three options that are currently in the report are not good options.
Okay. Colleagues, to try to, in the interest of time, I know we could talk about this for a long time. We have a lot of direction, and we'll work with you all individually as well on some of this direction, but we, without objection, if my colleagues agree, I'd like to send this back for a better and finaler option as opposed to what we have now, to get 30 days to go back to the negotiating table and come up with something that would satisfy the topics that we've been talking about and that we had in the motion itself as well. Without objection, so ordered. Thank you. Okay, we'll move to item number, we're going to jump around a little bit because in the interest of time and I'm losing some members. So item number 3.
Item number 3 is the joint report from the Bureau of Engineering and Bureau of Street Services relative to a comprehensive assessment of streets withdrawn from public use and the reinstatement procedure of such streets.
Great, and I'm going to bring up Ted Allen from the Bureau of Engineering and Keith Mose from the Bureau of Street Services, but I want to set this up for a moment because this has been a very big issue for me in my district since I took office. There are so many streets out there, particularly and throughout the city, but in my district over 80, where you have no clue that you're driving or walking on a street that is technically not in public use, that my constituents contact me, how come my street hasn't been paved in 80 years? and we say, oh, that can't be the case. We look into it, and they're right. Their street was taken out of public use in the 1930s, and all of us, and the what's that? 84 of these streets? Yes, it is shocking. When I first heard about this, it had to do with one particular street, then another particular street, and I went to the departments to figure out how could this be. We did the research, and it was always a particular case. Well, the street was taken out of use in 1936 because of this reason, and we would go do research, and sometimes we were able to find a little, that because the city did a guardrail, we could bring that street back into public use. So we were attacking them one at a time, but it didn't make any sense to me. And so I asked for a report from the departments of why is this happening and how big is this problem? And that's when we got the full extent and realized after I got that report back, this was not just a few streets in my district. This was over 300, or actually over about 500 altogether, streets throughout the city. And so I've been pushing and pushing of how we can get these streets back into public use since then, and did a motion not too long ago to get more of an evaluation of this, because this is, even though we've been successful in getting a few streets here and there, that's just not the way to do it. And we need to have this comprehensive approach. And since I've been chair since last year, this has been one of my priorities to look into this. So I'm very pleased that you all are coming forward on this, and that we can have a global solution for some of this. And I probably set this up a lot, but it was important to me. So now I'll turn it over to you to give your presentation. Dave, did you want to make an opening comment before they present?
Well, actually, this is such a no-brainer, and in the interest of time, I fully support this. This is an issue that I've been waiting for.
You have the second most number of streets.
Right, you have 84, I have 81, and this is something that I've been waiting for quite some time, and I really appreciate the chair's leadership here. And I just want to add to that, while these streets have been withdrawn, the city still has a liability on them, which makes absolute no sense. So I am fully supportive of adding this on. I don't think we need to hear the report unless the other colleagues want to hear it, because we could push it along.
Give us the short version. I know we're in time, but I know they've been working on this for a while, and just to where we're at, and I want to memorialize it, because finally it's music to my ears, because I haven't been able to get the department to say this, and I've been asking for so long. I want to actually hear it in public. Then it'll make it more real, because over these last years, as you guys know, I've been trying to get you to come to this conclusion. So play the music briefly, but
sure.
Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Ted Allen with the Bureau of Engineering, Deputy City Engineer. As you mentioned, the procedure for putting these withdrawn streets back to public use, the policy for that goes back over 20 years, which was to return them to public use when the streets are found to be safe and passable by the Board of Public Works, was interpreted to be they meet the full city standards. So if you ask an engineer, when is it safe and passable, we'll recommend it should meet our standards. And so that's been the policy for 20 years. But in reevaluating whether that's the best policy, we're coming back making a recommendation to consider a different policy, and largely based on, if you look at a lot of the adjoining streets that are not withdrawn from public use, a lot of them don't meet the full city standards of our, if we were to build a new development, here's what we would want to build. In the hillside areas, a lot of times there's not space to do that. And so a lot of these streets are just the best that could be fit in at the time. And so honestly, the bar of fully meeting city standards to return a street to public use, to find it safe and passable, is a very difficult bar to meet, and it's been very difficult to return these streets back to public use. But in reality, a lot of them are in public use. There's people driving on them. And so in re-looking at this policy, our recommendation is to consider returning them to public use kind of en masse. If there are a few here and there that really are still a significant problem, we can work with the council offices, Bureau of Street Services, DOT, to figure out how to handle those. No differently than other streets that exist now that are not withdrawn from public use, that may be paper streets or may, not be built out to standards. And so, the council instruction had a number of things. One is detailing, itemizing all the streets withdrawn from public use. So we've provided what we have in our record. Some of those, though, are not the ordinances we all think of, but they're actually motions. And in moving forward, we want to look at those more closely and make sure we don't accidentally capture some that were done for safety reasons for gating something through a different process. So we'll make sure those are separated out. But we have provided that list. I believe it was 374 in total streets to consider, some through ordinances, some through motions. And, this will enable the city to treat them like all of the other streets.
And if a street's really not safe and it's horribly dangerous, then people shouldn't be driving on it.
Right.
And if it's just not up to our codes, but it is what it is because of the years and it's a little substandard, we should own it and accept it and deal with it in that case. And being able to differentiate that makes it a big difference. Keith, do you want to add to that?
Yeah, just to make a long story short, is basically we'll start incorporating these into our pavement preservation program, actually start paving these type streets. They are in poor condition. They vary in width from 10 feet to, say, 36 feet. But if there are cases to where we cannot pave it, then we'll work on a collaborative effort with the Bureau of Engineering to get geotechnical reports that we can somehow fix these streets.
Great. Mr. Rue.
Yes, if I could just add a couple of friendly amendments, instructions, especially since I have so many community members from the hillsides here. I'd like to instruct BSS to report back in 120 days with an assessment of the streets identified in this report, requirements for bringing those streets up to city standard, and a plan to roll out these streets into the city's annual work plan. Secondarily, I also like to instruct BOE to provide a map of the streets on this list that are considered substandard hillside streets, which should be reconstructed in concrete, and which ones should be reconstructed in concrete and which ones should be repaired in asphalt. And thirdly, I want to instruct BOE and BSS, with the assistance of the city attorney, to report back on the use of private funds to repave the streets in question. I could have those.
Certainly accept that as a friendly amendment, although it may not be just concrete or asphalt. We now have these, 51? We have that third option to include, what do you call it, the new materials fix? No, the
1781?
1781
Yes.
stuff. So it could be that too. So just rather than just A or B, whatever, to come back with a report of the appropriate way.
The goal is just to have a plan.
Right,
A
yes.
plan for replacement.
I agree. I just wanted to be clear, not just two options, but whatever the best option is. Colleagues, any other comments or questions? No? Okay, then without objection, I'm thrilled to move this forward and accepting the amendments. Okay, great. So motion is agreed. We're going to jump to item 6. I understand we may have a request for continuance on this, so we'll have city staff come up. Oh, wait, there were no public comment on that last item, correct? No. No, okay, thank you. Item 6, also staff report before we...
Robert Mallow, to the Deputy City Attorney on behalf of staff. We appear to, the appellant and project applicant have reached a concrete tentative settlement of this matter and are requesting a continuance so they can finalize that. And we anticipate that if it settles, the appeal will be withdrawn and we won't hear the item. This is the Jamie Hall, from attorney for the appellant.
Yes, we'll consent to the continuance. We are going to go back to Bob's office and sign a draft deal term sheet. And I just want to thank everyone from my board and the various associations who came out today.
Great, thank you very much. Before we move forward with that, though, we have 4 public speakers who I assume are going to be fine, but I do, as a procedural matter, I want to call each of them up. If you're okay with what they're saying, you can just say pass when I call your name. If you wish to speak, you will be given a minute to speak. Stephanie Savage. So if you pass. Stella Gray. Stella Gray. Let the record reflect Stella Gray is not here. Ellen Evans. Ellen Evans. Let the record reflect she's not here. And Robin Greenberg. Pass. Okay, so of the speakers that were on the queue, 2 have passed, hearing what we just heard about the agreement, and 2 are not here. Was there any last comments from the colleagues on this? Was there a question?
Well, can we table this item? Do we have another agenda item, or is this the last one?
No, we have another item.
Can we come back to this? Can we table it on?
We can. I mean,
yeah.
They're asking for a continuance.
Right. No, but Just, yeah, if we could table it for a minute so I have a chance to talk to the city attorney.
Okay, we will table this for the moment, and we'll come back to it. I expect a continuance, but we are tabling it for a moment, and we will jump to item number 4.
And Councilmember, prior to item number 4, I wanted to get a clarification for item number 1. The official, our official recommendation was to continue this in committee for 30 days, correct?
Yeah, with instructions that they go back and renegotiate or to come up with a best and final offer in the next 30 days.
And we will hold this in committee, and once they come back, then we will hear this again in committee.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Okay, on this item 4, it was one that we could do on consent potentially, but we do have speaker cards on it. So I'm going to call, we have a number of speaker cards, so I'm going to call those cards forward. This is number 4.
And for item number 4, it was an ordinance and city attorney report relative to updating and increasing the street damage restoration fee and the street damage restoration fee special fund.
So I think from my perspective, we've heard this quite a bit, and I'm happy to move it forward. But we have public comments, so Jared Wright, followed by Shane Phillips.
All right. Make sure I got this all set up correctly. All right, good afternoon, council members. Gerard Wright, Policy Manager for LA County Business Federation. We're just going to comment on, it's currently written, we oppose the fee. We just want to come to the table and be a partner with Bureau, with the street services, with the city council, and try to figure out a way to come up with a solution that works, because we understand the need for the fee. We understand what's required for it, but the way the process that's been taking place thus far, without public input, without too much in the way of that dialogue with the industry and with the public, is very disconcerting, very, I think, is not in the right spirit. And I know that's not what you want to perceive or at least present. So at least our members within BizFed, we do an annual poll, and members, over 81% of them says that taxes and fees are the number one reason why businesses are leaving the LA area. So that's a reason why it's to come to the table, come in with good faith, and come with reasons that are admirable and that work to find the right solution. We're willing to work with you. Thank you so very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Shane Phillips, followed by Noel Paez. Palales, maybe mispronouncing. Ms. Shane Phillips? Shane Phillips? Okay, Shane Phillips is not here. Noel Palais, followed by Armando Flores.
Good afternoon, Noel Palais with AT&T. I will defer my time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Armando Flores, followed by Peter Hidalgo.
Good afternoon, council members. My name is Armando Flores, Legislative Affairs Manager with the Valley Industry and Commerce Association, VICA. We're here today to oppose the changes being proposed to the street damage restoration fees, which will significantly impact businesses, ratepayers, utility companies. One of the recommendations made in the study conducted by the Public Works Commission is to expand the SDRF assessment area to 5 feet in each direction of an excavation. This means that for a 1-foot-long trench, an entity would be required to pay for a total of 11 feet. The Bureau of Engineering already requires a higher standard of backfill material and tickets to prevent future failures, and also requires larger surface areas to be repaved. Applying width of influence to the SDRF assessment would create duplicative costs. As proposed, the SDRF changes will have a tremendous fiscal impact, as I mentioned. Although the SDRF has not been updated since 2006, any changes made to the fees should be based on a technical study that considers and evaluates the impact of roadway cuts under the new standards. Thank you.
Thank you. I know I said Peter next, or Peter Hidalgo, followed by Shane Phillips.
I'm Shane. Did I just miss? I can let someone go.
Go ahead, Shane. Go ahead.
Okay, great.
You go next, and then we'll get Peter.
Appreciate it. Good afternoon, Shane Phillips with Central City Association. CCA is an advocate for growth and investment in downtown LA, and we remain concerned that SDRF fees generated in downtown will become an ongoing subsidy for road repairs in other parts of the city. There's currently no clear summary of where SDRF fees are generated and spent, so we're asking that this committee require BSS to track these numbers, share them publicly, and ensure that a fair share of SDRF fees are reinvested in the communities where they're paid. Since this is a mitigation fee, there must be a clear nexus between damage from street cuts and the fees collected to mitigate that damage. If BSS can't fully reinvest SDRF money back into the neighborhoods where those street cuts are happening, that would mean the fee has been set too high in excess of the damage actually caused by street cuts. Tracking and a geographic local return will help prevent this from happening, and so we ask that you include it in the ordinance. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Peter, followed by Frank Lopez. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Peter Hidalgo with Charter Communications Spectrum. Charter Communications, as you know, is a large provider here in the city, and we are seeking the committee's indulgence as you consider this draft ordinance. And we, bottom line, are just asking that the committee would instruct the city family to work with businesses to try to reach a compromise, some kind of reasonable resolution to try to address some of the significant concerns that we have. In particular, we ask that you would consider collaboratively working with us in instituting the increased fee with all the new standards, especially as we're evaluating them, especially the new utility trenching detail that was enacted last year that we're all complying with. We hope that you would be open to working with us. Working together is always the best, and we hope that you would agree with that. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Peter. Frank Lopez, followed by John Johnston.
Good afternoon, council members. Frank Lopez with SoCal Gas. In full disclosure, the gas company is exempt from SDRF, but we are not exempt from paying the city when we cut into the city street. We pay the city over $20 million in franchise fees on an annual basis to operate in the public right-of-way. Despite our exemption, we're really here today in solidarity with our utility and industry partners regarding this issue. We regularly collaborate to find solutions to regional issues that impact our operations, and we share their concerns. I think it's important to point out that industry has not been opposed to increasing or modernizing the fee throughout this entire process. We know that it's time for it to be modernized. We just have concerns about the way that it's being applied, and so we would urge you to hold off voting on this ordinance until there's been a more collaborative and inclusive process with the industry to try to find opportunities to improve the ordinance so it achieves both improving the quality of the streets, but more fairly distributing the cost among all users and people who drive, bike, and walk on the streets. Thank you.
Thank you very much. John Johnston, followed by Christine Rangel.
Good afternoon, council members. I'm John Johnston with AT&T from the Construction and Engineering Department. I may not be as a polished speaker as the prior folks that have come up here, but I just wanted to mention that, as all the other speakers have, that we are interested in working collaboratively with BOE and Bureau of Street Services to come up with a reasonable street damage restoration fee change. Obviously, a change is required, but I just wanted to bring up a couple of items. In September of last year, the Bureau of Engineering worked with those of us in the industry to come up with a standard plan for asphalt streets. This is a standard plan S-477. It was revised again in March of this year, so it's 477-1. The point behind this was to create a standard across the industry for quality trenches and for quality streets that would extend the lives of our streets here in Los Angeles.
Oh, you just finish your thought, and time's up, but go ahead and finish your last thought.
I just wanted to say that guideline was intended to extend the life of the streets. Street damage restoration fee is doing the same. The standards that were set by the standard plan, I would hope that they could be maybe decreased, since we're paying we're paying extra money for doing the same thing twice.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Last speaker, Christine Rangel.
Good afternoon, Christine Rangel, Building Industry Association. On behalf of BIA, I'm here today to express our opposition to the proposed ordinance and request an opportunity to amend the ordinance before it comes back to committee. We are disappointed with the lack of process. We were never given notice or an opportunity to provide input on the proposal when it was originally developed. None of our shared concerns were addressed when we did provide input, and the council opted to include the increased revenue from the proposed changes in this year's budget before the ordinance was even adopted. As not only a stakeholder, but as a provider, a builder and provider of new sorely needed housing and a builder of those infrastructure improvements, we see our relationship with the city as a partnership. We must build more housing. We must house the homeless. We must modernize our infrastructure for the Olympics. Those challenges will not be overcome if the city continues to penalize the very businesses that build them. Over the last 2 years, we've seen exponentially increased park fees, a brand new linkage fee, and measured JJJ. All of these have added costs. However, there's not been a single ordinance aimed at making it easier or less expensive to build, and because of this, entitlements are suffering. But don't take my word for it. I'm leaving you your permit numbers so you can see how they went down massively after June.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, my recommendation is we approve the draft ordinance. We had discussion earlier directing them to draft the ordinance. The ordinance reflects what that discussion was. Is there any objection to moving forward? Seeing no objection, that will be the order. The ordinance is approved. Moving back, Mr. Rudy, you want more time, or should we move to item 2 on the yeah, so we'll move back to item number 6. Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I very much appreciate it. And it does appear like there was a last-minute resolution on this case, which is a good thing. But I want to take this time to point out a systemic problem in our system. It's very clear that the city staff followed the established process for a protected tree removal. And during plan check, urban forestry, building and safety, and city planning followed procedures and obeyed the municipal code and did their job. However, that does not mean I believe the established process is a good one or one that should be followed for future tree removals. The protocols and process can and should be changed. In this case, the permit was obtained by the property owner. The permit that was obtained by the property owner required the replacement of these trees at 4-to-1. But the language in the permit says, replacement tree planting shall follow the landscape plan to the fullest extent possible. Now, the term fullest extent possible doesn't provide the certainty or the clarity that we need. And the applicant wasn't able to retain the 2 trees on the lot in question, so how on earth were they going to put 4 times more the trees on that same site? So it's a conundrum there, and the city had 3 options as I see it. Grant the permit, deny the permit, or work with the applicant to avoid the tree removal during the site design and then grant the permit. The loss of these trees matters. We can't put the trees back on the ground once they're removed, and the lack of communication between the department is partially responsible for where we are today. While it looks like this case has come to a resolution, I want to be absolutely clear that the interpretation of this language in this case was a procedural choice, and regardless of how the city has interpreted the standard in the past, I consider the phrase "to the fullest extent possible" to mean that 8 trees are going to be planted as closest to the project site as possible. And in the future, protected trees related cases like this, I would really hope that BSS and LADBS work with the Environmental Policy Unit and the Wildlife Protection Areas Group at City Planning, and use this as a test case to improve site design and environmental review processes. Simply following the process is not enough, and we have an obligation to do better to protect our natural resources, in particular our trees and urban canopy, and pass them along to future generations. And I just want to also add, for my community members who are here, some of the deal terms are, to my understanding, that they will plant all 8 trees on the site, plus adjacent. On the site or the adjacent site, and sell the adjacent property to Laurel Canyon Land Trust for habitat preservation. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. It sounds like at least a good deal came here, and we need to work on the clarity
Right, and you'll be seeing some more motions later too.
Excellent. I'm happy to work with you on that and to try to make that work. Yes,
Thank
we're
you.
we're all with you. So without objection, that item is continued. That brings us to item number 2.
Item number 2 is a report from the Information Technology Agency relative to the city's wireless small cell permitting procedures. This was also referred to the Information Technology and General Services Committee.
Good afternoon, Chairman Blumenfield, Councilmember Martinez, Rodriguez, and Rio. My name is William Imperial. I am a telecommunications officer, telecommunications regulatory officer with the Information Technology Agency. We were asked tasked by the City Council to provide a joint report on the city's telecommunications, wireless and small cell permitting procedures that involve the General Services Department, the Bureau of Engineering, and Bureau of Streets and Lighting. A joint report was submitted to the council, and it's here today to be discussed. We understand that you do have some questions with regard to how those permitting procedures are being used by these departments at this time in order to meet the growing demand for telecommunication facility planting or development in the city's public rights-of-way and vertical infrastructure, and I'm talking about the poles in particular. We know that 5G is coming. It's already here. Verizon brought it already. AT&T is right behind them. There will be other companies that will be coming to the city. And in that regard, we prepared this report so that we could answer the questions that you provided to us to be asked of these departments. I wanted to note that ITA is not involved in these permitting processes, but we have been facilitating the dealings with the companies that are asking to have these permitting procedures either streamlined or dealt with on a more streamlined basis. And we have been meeting that task, just so you know. As a department and as a family between the departments. In that regard, in the report, and I don't know how far you want to go into the details, we do have representatives here from those departments. We answered your questions with regard to the steps that are required to review and process a telecommunication company's applications request. The average time required to fully process an application or request, the current number of application requests received on a monthly basis, the number of staff available in each department to process these application requests, how each department or bureau informs the public about the process to apply or request co-location on city infrastructure or facilities, and we have done that.
Right.
So if you have any questions, I can either take those questions and refer to the report, or we can have the representatives come up.
Well, you know, the reason why I asked for this in the first place, I mean, obviously we want 5G. It's coming. We want to make sure we're as streamlined as possible. But we also have this issue where there are state and federal laws that keep coming up, and we know that folks are trying to get more of them in place. We got very lucky in that the state law was not signed by the governor that would have prevented us from recouping our costs and basically forced us to subsidize more so than we're doing. And so I guess my question is, and one way to avoid this kind of being forced to by the state or the feds to subsidize these things is to make sure that our rates are down at the least that they can be, so that that argument can't be used against us. So is there a way for the city to protect itself against the future state and federal policies that we know are coming? Because the folks who got the legislature to do this are not stopping. They're going to bring it back, and they're going to try it. They're already trying it at the federal level, because there's a lot of money, not just in LA, but across the country. So what can we do to inoculate ourselves?
I think that particular question is under heavy discussion right now at the national level by all of the local municipalities that are going to be impacted by 2 Federal Communication Commission rulings that have just been issued as of last week. We're looking at those orders. They haven't taken effect yet. But if you're asking me what it is that we can do, there's 2 things that essentially I would recommend on behalf of the city. I don't know if the city attorney's office would agree with me. I would defer to them, but I believe that if we can work with these companies right now before these orders actually take effect, and looking at those dates, and we were to add a non-preemption clause, a safe harbor clause that says these agreements shall not be preempted by any state or federal law or rulings or orders, then I think that would be sufficient, because I would believe that they would be enforceable in a court of law. But these companies do want to work with us, by the way, and they have stated to a certain extent that they're willing to do it on that basis. The problem
They would be willing to do it on a preemption basis?
Yes. But,
I would be pleasantly surprised.
But they're looking for favorable terms, and that's the balance. So if we can come to the table and bring those negotiated terms back to the council very quickly, which we're trying to do, we could then hopefully outrun the FCC orders that will be taking place. We do intend, by the way, we're already in a position to join a coalition or coalitions, because they're two separate orders that have to be dealt with separately. But it'll be probably the same coalition members to deal with the Federal Communications Commission orders. So that would be my suggestion. That's about as far as we could go, but if these companies are willing to deal with us on the basis that they have been dealing with us over the last year and a half, then I think that we could come back to the council and recommend something that would be beneficial to the city.
And have we been seeing a big increase in workloads because of this?
Not yet.
Not yet.
But I think it's because we're still in that process of getting to the terms that the telecommunications companies can agree with. They're called batch applications, actually. Yeah.
Great. Well, that certainly seems like a good. And do you need anything from us as a council to help with that direction, or is that you don't need that from us?
Well, what we would like is the support of the council with regard to instructing not just ITA, but the various departments that are impacted by these permitting procedures to do the best that they can and negotiate the best deal before these orders actually take effect. And we could probably do that very quickly once we have that direction.
Well, actually, we can give that direction, I think, from this report. Right, so that I'm going to recommend that we do that.
Very
at
good.
the very least. Colleagues, any additional comments, questions? Or City Attorney, do you want to weigh in on that question or the preemption, or is it too early to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's practical limits for the ability to negotiate preemption, a preemption clause in an agreement, but it's certainly one of the tools that's available to the city when we negotiate with the wireless providers.
Thank you.
Okay, great. I think the report's great with a lot of good information in there. Seeing no additional questions and the hour being very late, I think we will end. This was a receive and file, but we have comment cards. I'm sorry. So before we do that, but I am going to recommend, unless the comment cards sway me otherwise, that we make the recommendation for expedient negotiations. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. So we have 3 comment cards. Apologize. So if I could have Shannon Nichols, followed by Noel Pallas, followed by Scott Longhurst. Okay, Ms. Nichols waives her time. Mr. Pallas? No? Appears that Noel Pallas is not here. Scott Longhurst? Mr. Longhurst, welcome.
Good afternoon, Chairman, City Council members. My name is Scott Longhurst. I'm the Government Relations Manager for Crown Castle in Southern California. And I really just wanted to take the opportunity to point out to all of you, if you are not aware of this, that Los Angeles is one of the leaders in terms of the deployment of small cell technology, as well as the fiber optic infrastructure that goes along with it. And I really wanted to commend all of you and your staff, and to let you know that it has been a pleasure working with the Public Works Department, Bureau of Street Lighting, and others. And because of that kind of progressive attitude of all of you and your staff, I can tell you that Crown Castle in particular built more sites in the city of Los Angeles last year than we did in all of Southern California combined. So the benefits of this technology are already being realized by your constituents. And as we build out these small cell networks on behalf of our clients, we're installing additional fiber capacity so that we don't have to go back in the future and tear up the streets that have already been torn up like you discussed in the previous item. And there's additional fiber capacity there for your businesses and residents that are in the street. So The city has gone a long way in a very positive manner to accommodate this technology in our build-out, and like everyone else has spoken, we look forward to continuing to work with you in a collaborative manner so that we can deploy this and for the benefit of all your technology businesses and your constituents. So again, we would like to be here as a resource for you. If there's anything we can do, are there any questions we can answer, issues we could address, we're happy to do so. And thank you for your time and allowing me to address you today.
Thank you. Appreciate the comments. I for one, am very excited about 5G coming and all the IoT and all the exciting things that we can do with this new technology. So we know any further action needed?
No, I believe we approved that as amended with the amendments that you said to
Great. Approve
expedite the negotiation.
as amended, or is there anything else on the desk? Looks empty to me.
No, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Without objection, this meeting is adjourned.